Nobody tells you the truth about life. Not because they are lying, not because they want to mislead you, but because the truth about life is uncomfortable. It requires things from people that most people are not willing to give. And so instead of the truth, we get comfortable versions of it, softened versions, versions that have been rounded off at the edges so they do not cut anything. And the result of a lifetime of comfortable versions of the truth is a life lived slightly off course. Not dramatically off, not in a way that announces itself loudly, just quietly, persistently, consistently off from where it could have been if someone had told you the real thing early enough and you had been willing to hear it. I am going to tell you the real thing today. Not to be harsh, not to be brutal, but because I believe that the honest truth, delivered with genuine care for the person receiving it, is the most valuable thing one human being can offer another. More valuable than encouragement that is not earned, more valuable than comfort that does not serve growth, more valuable than the kind of motivation that makes you feel good for an hour and leaves you exactly where you were. The truth changes things. The comfortable version just maintains them. So let us begin. The first powerful truth of life is that nobody is coming to save you. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Not to feel despair at it, to feel the liberation inside it. Nobody is coming. Not the person you are waiting on to finally recognize your potential, not the opportunity that is going to arrive and change everything, not the circumstance that is going to align perfectly and finally make it possible for you to start, not the mentor who is going to find you and give you everything you need, not the universe conspiring to reward you for your patience. Nobody is coming. And here is why that is the most liberating truth you will ever hear instead of the most devastating one. Because as long as you believe that someone or something outside of you is responsible for the trajectory of your life, you are waiting. You are in a posture of waiting, of hoping, of placing the direction of your existence in hands that are not yours and may never open. The moment you understand that nobody is coming, truly understand it, in your bones, not just intellectually, is the moment you stop waiting and start moving. It is the moment the responsibility for your life lands squarely where it has always belonged, with you. And responsibility, real responsibility, is not a burden, it is power. It is the power to act, to choose, to direct, to build. The people who are living the lives you admire are not living them because someone came and handed those lives to them. They are living them because at some point they understood that nobody was going to, and they decided to build them themselves, with the resources they had, in the circumstances they were in, without waiting for conditions to improve, or for someone to notice, or for the moment to feel exactly right. They stopped waiting, and everything changed. Stop waiting. Nobody is coming, but you are here, and that is enough. If you were 30 years old and you live to 80, you have 50 years left. That sounds like a long time until you start looking at how that time is actually distributed. You will spend approximately 17 of those years sleeping. You will spend approximately 10 years working, and that is if you work reasonable hours. You will spend years eating, commuting, managing the basic logistics of being alive. What remains, the time that is genuinely yours to direct as you choose, to invest in the things that matter most to you, is far smaller than the raw number of years suggests. And within that already limited time, how much is currently being spent on things that are genuinely moving your life toward what you want? How much is being consumed by distraction, by passive entertainment, by the infinite scroll of content that captures your attention without giving anything meaningful in return? Most people, if they examined this honestly, would find that the amount of time they are investing in the things that will determine the quality of their life is shockingly small, and the amount they are spending on things that contribute nothing, that they will not remember, that produce no growth, that leave no trace, is shockingly large. This is not a judgment, it is a reflection. Because most people are not consciously choosing to spend their time poorly. They are just not consciously choosing at all. They are letting time happen to them rather than directing it.
moving through days and weeks and months in a kind of automatic pilot state, following habits and patterns that were never examined and may never have been chosen. The truth about time is that it is the most finite resource you have, that you are spending it every moment whether you intend to or not, and that the difference between a life that feels like it mattered and one that does not is almost entirely a question of what that time was used for. Use it deliberately, not perfectly, not without rest or leisure or the simple pleasure of doing nothing in particular, but deliberately, with enough intentionality that when you look back, the time you spent was pointed towards something real. The fourth powerful truth of life is that most people will never tell you when you are wrong, and that silence is costing you more than criticism ever could. There are people in your life who have noticed things about you, patterns, blind spots, behaviors that are holding you back or damaging your relationships or limiting your potential in ways that are visible to everyone around you but somehow invisible to you. And most of them will never tell you. Not because they do not care, but because honesty is uncomfortable, because telling someone a truth they do not want to hear is a social risk, because the relationship might not survive it. Because it is easier, more comfortable, and less conflict-generating to simply smile and nod and let you continue doing the thing that is quietly costing you everything. And so you are surrounded by people who see things you cannot see and say nothing, and you move through your life with blind spots that everyone can see except you, making the same mistakes, repeating the same patterns, wondering why certain things keep going wrong when the answer is available, has always been available, in the honest observations of the people who know you but will not risk telling you. This truth has two implications. The first is that you need to actively seek honest feedback, not just ask for it in the casual, defensive way that signals you do not really want it, but genuinely, vulnerably, with the explicit understanding that you are giving the other person permission to tell you things that are uncomfortable and that you will not punish them for the honesty. Because that permission, that genuine, demonstrated openness to hard feedback is what makes it possible for people to actually give it to you. The second implication is that you need to examine yourself honestly and regularly in the places where no external feedback will come. Where is your ego protecting you from seeing something true? Where are you telling yourself a story that feels accurate but might not be? Where are the patterns in your life, in your relationships, in your finances, in your work, in your growth, that keep repeating in ways that suggest the common factor is you? The person who can ask and answer those questions honestly, regularly, without defensiveness, that person grows at a rate that is impossible for the person who cannot, because they are operating with more accurate information, and accuracy of information is the foundation of quality decisions. The fifth powerful truth of life is that the version of yourself you show to the world is not who you are. It is who you have decided is safe to be. Most of us are not living as ourselves. We are living as a carefully constructed, socially calibrated version of ourselves that has been shaped by years of figuring out what is acceptable, what is admired, what generates approval, and what generates rejection. And that version, the performance, the mask, the curated self, is not who we are. It is who we have decided is safe to be. And the distance between the performance and the reality is the source of an enormous amount of quiet suffering, the exhaustion of maintaining a version of yourself that is not quite you, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who like the performance but don't know the person underneath it, the chronic dissatisfaction of living a life that fits the version instead of the real thing. The truth about authenticity is that it is not just a moral virtue. It is a practical necessity for genuine well-being. The research is clear and consistent. People who live in alignment with their actual values, who express themselves honestly in their relationships, who allow the real version of themselves to be seen rather than always presenting a managed version, those people are measurably happier, healthier, and more resilient than people who do not.
Not because the world is always kind to authentic people.
It is not. Authenticity carries risk. The real version of you will not be acceptable to everyone. Some people will prefer the performance. Some will be made uncomfortable by someone who is genuinely themselves in a world of people who are not. But the people who are drawn to the real version of you, the connection that is possible when you stop performing and start being, that is something worth any amount of discomfort, because it is real, and realness is the only foundation on which anything lasting can be built. Stop performing. Start being. Gradually, if gradually is all you can manage right now. In one relationship, in one context, in one small act of letting someone see something true about you. And notice what it produces. Notice the quality of the connection that becomes possible. Notice the weight that lifts when you stop maintaining the performance. Then do it again, wider, deeper, more. The sixth powerful truth of life is that the quality of your relationships will determine the quality of your life more than almost anything else. Not your income, not your achievements, not your productivity or your discipline or your skills or your knowledge, or any of the individual attributes that self-improvement culture tends to focus on. The quality of your relationships, the depth of your connections with other human beings, the degree to which you are genuinely known and genuinely loved and genuinely capable of knowing and loving in return. The research on this is among the most robust in all of social science. The Harvard study of adult development, which followed people across their entire adult lives, found that the single strongest predictor of health, happiness, and longevity in old age was not wealth or fame or achievement. It was the quality of relationships. People with warm, close, genuine connections lived longer, stayed healthier, and reported greater life satisfaction than people without them, regardless of almost every other variable. This truth has practical implications that most people ignore. They spend enormous energy developing their professional skills, their financial intelligence, their physical health, their productivity, all of which matter, while underinvesting in the relational skills and the relational time that will ultimately determine more of their well-being than all of those other investments combined. Relational skills are real skills, the ability to listen deeply, not just wait for your turn to speak, but actually attend to what another person is experiencing. The ability to express yourself honestly without defensiveness or aggression. The ability to repair a relationship after conflict rather than letting damage accumulate. The ability to be genuinely present with another person rather than physically there while mentally elsewhere. These are learnable, developable, improvable with practice. And the time invested in real human connection, not the performative version, not the social media version, but the actual face-to-face, voice-to-voice, heart-to-heart version, that time is not a luxury, it is a necessity for your health, your happiness, your resilience, and the sustainability of everything else you are trying to build. Invest in the people who matter to you, genuinely, consistently, with real presence, not just physical proximity. The return on that investment will exceed anything else you spend your time on. The seventh powerful truth of life is that failure is not the opposite of success. It is the path to it. Every person you admire for their success has a failure story that is proportional to that success, not as a background detail, as the central chapter, as the part of the story that made everything else possible. Because failure is not just something that happens on the way to success. It is the mechanism through which success becomes possible. It is the feedback system that tells you what is not working so you can adjust toward what does. It is the teacher that no amount of planning, no amount of preparation, no amount of theoretical understanding can replace. You cannot think your way to the knowledge that failure provides. You can only earn it by attempting things and experiencing the real-world consequences of those attempts. And some of those consequences will be failure, not as punishment, as education. The problem is not that people fail. The problem is that most people treat failure as evidence that they should stop, rather than information about how to continue. They attempt something, it does not work, and they conclude either that the thing is impossible or that they are not the kind of person who can do it. And from that conclusion, they stop. And the stopping is not the result of the failure. It is the choice that transforms a setback into a permanent ending. The people who ultimately succeed are not the people who fail less. They are the people who fail more because they attempt more and who have developed the relationship with failure that allows them to extract the lesson and continue, rather than extract the conclusion and stop. Develop that relationship, not by being reckless, by being genuinely willing to attempt things before you are certain they will work, by allowing yourself to be bad at things while you are learning them, by treating every failure as a question, what does this tell me, rather than as a verdict, what does this prove about me? The verdict it proves is only ever that you tried, and trying, with the willingness to fail and continue, is the entire mechanism of becoming. The eighth powerful truth of life is that most people are too concerned with what other people think, and that concern is the cage they are living in. The fear of judgment, of being seen trying and failing, of being perceived as different, of doing something that does not fit the expected version of who you are supposed to be, is one of the most powerful forces limiting human potential. Not because the judgment is always coming, often it is not, but because the anticipation of it shapes behavior as surely as if it were.
Most people are making their most important life decisions: what to pursue, what to risk, what to express, what to become, based on an imaginary audience, a version of other people's opinions that lives in their head and that often bears little resemblance to what those people actually think, or would think if they knew. And they are shrinking their lives to fit the imaginary audience's imagined expectations. Here is the truth about what other people actually think about you. They are mostly thinking about themselves. The amount of mental space most people devote to evaluating and judging the choices of others is a tiny fraction of the amount they devote to managing their own lives, anxieties, and self-presentation. The judgment you are afraid of is mostly not happening. And when it is happening, it is usually coming from people who are not living the kind of life that makes their judgment worth considering. The person who is genuinely building something real, who is genuinely growing, who is genuinely focused on their own development, that person does not have significant mental bandwidth left over to devote to criticizing yours. The people with the most to say about how you are living your life are almost always the people doing the least with their own. Let them say it. Do the thing anyway. Live the version of your life that is actually yours, not the version that fits everyone else's comfort. Because the cost of living inside the cage of other people's opinions, the missed opportunities, the unexpressed potential, the quiet grief of a life that was adjusted to fit expectations rather than lived to fulfill actual values, that cost is far greater than any judgment you were trying to avoid. Break out, one decision at a time, starting with the one you have been postponing because of what someone might think. The ninth powerful truth of life is that your habits are your destiny. Not your intentions, not your goals, not the vision you have for your future, or the plan you have for getting there, or the values you hold, or the person you believe yourself to be. Your habits.
The small, repeated, mostly automatic behaviors that constitute the actual texture of your daily life. Because while you are thinking about the person you want to become, your habits are building the person you actually are. Every morning that begins with your phone is a vote for distraction. Every evening that ends without reflection is a vote for unconsciousness. Every meal, every movement, every choice about how to spend the next 30 minutes, all of it is a vote for one version of yourself or another. And the votes accumulate into health or into illness, into growth or into stagnation, into the life you imagined or into the default version that emerges when nothing is consciously chosen. The distance between where you are and where you want to be is almost entirely explained by the distance between your current habits and the habits of the person you want to become. Not the big dramatic distance, the small daily repeated distance, the version that is slightly better or slightly worse than yours in each small repeated behavior. And here is the most important thing about habits. They are not fixed. They are not determined by your personality or your history, or the family you came from, or the patterns you have been in for years. They are behaviors, and behaviors can be changed through small, consistent, patient repetition of a different choice until the different choice becomes automatic. Start with one habit, the one that, if changed, would have the largest positive effect on your life right now. Make it small enough that you genuinely cannot say no. Repeat it every day. Let it become who you are. Then change another. This is not a quick process. It is not dramatic. It does not make for an impressive story in the short term. But in the long term, in the version of your life that exists a year from now, 5 years from now, the person built through daily better habits is so far beyond the person built through occasional good intentions that the comparison barely seems fair. Build the habits, and let the habits build you. The 10th powerful truth of life is that meaning is not found, it is made. This is perhaps the truth that has caused the most suffering through misunderstanding. The idea that life has a meaning that exists somewhere outside of you, waiting to be discovered. That there is a purpose you are supposed to find, a calling that is your unique destiny, and that until you find it, you are somehow not yet fully living. And people search. They try different things, looking for the one that makes them feel like they have found it. They travel, they experiment, they read, they ask people who seem to have it figured out. And often they do not find what they are looking for, and they conclude that they are among the unfortunate ones who do not have a special purpose, that the meaning that other people seem to have has somehow been allocated to everyone but them. But that is not how meaning works. Meaning is not a treasure to be found. It is a thing to be made, created, built, through the choices you make about what to care about, what to commit to, what to invest your limited time and energy in. The people who have what looks from the outside like found meaning almost always built it, through years of engagement with something they decided mattered, through the gradual deepening of a commitment that started as uncertain and became, through sustained attention, something they genuinely could not imagine living without, through the relationships they chose to cultivate and the work they chose to take seriously and the values they chose to organize their lives around. They did not discover their purpose, they built it. From available materials, in real circumstances, through real choices about what to give their life to. You can do the same thing, not by waiting for the revelation, by choosing, by committing, by deciding that this thing, this work, this relationship, this cause, this practice, this community is worth the giving of your genuine self. And then giving it, not waiting until you are certain, giving it while you are still uncertain, and letting the certainty develop through the giving.
Meaning follows commitment, not the other way around. Choose what you are committed to, and let the meaning grow from that choice. The 11th powerful truth of life is that discipline is freedom. This truth sounds paradoxical. Discipline, in the way most people experience it, feels like the opposite of freedom. It feels like restriction, like saying no to things you want, like imposing structure on a life that would naturally prefer to be unstructured, like denying yourself ease and comfort and the simple pleasure of doing whatever you feel like in the moment. But that is only how discipline feels from the outside. From the inside, from the lived experience of someone who has actually built it, discipline feels like something entirely different. It feels like the freedom to do what you said you were going to do, like the freedom from the constant negotiation with yourself about whether to show up or not, like the freedom from the guilt and the self-disappointment of having said one thing and done another, like the freedom that comes from having built, through consistent daily effort, a life that actually reflects what you value, rather than a life that reflects whatever impulse won the moment-to-moment battle between intention and comfort. The undisciplined person is not more free than the disciplined one. They are more subject to their impulses, more subject to their moods, more subject to whatever is most immediately stimulating or comfortable or easy. They are not free, they are reactive, and reactive is the opposite of free. The person who has built genuine discipline, who has built the habits and the practices and the commitments that allow them to act consistently in alignment with their actual values rather than their momentary preferences, that person is free in a way that the reactive person is not. Free to build what they want to build, free to become who they want to become, free from the tyranny of their own inconsistency. Build discipline, not as self-punishment, as self-liberation, as the daily practice of becoming someone who can be trusted, by themselves most of all, to actually do what they say they are going to do. The 12th powerful truth of life is that gratitude and growth are not opposites, they are partners. There is a version of the self-improvement mindset that is quietly toxic, the version that is so focused on what needs to change, on the gap between where you are and where you want to be, on the inadequacy of the current situation relative to the imagined future one, that it makes it impossible to actually experience the life that is happening right now. The person who is always optimizing, always improving, always measuring themselves against the version they are trying to become, never arrives at a place of genuine satisfaction. Because satisfaction requires being present with what is, and the optimization mindset is always pulling toward what is not yet. And the practical result of this is not a life of greater achievement. Research consistently shows that people who cannot experience genuine gratitude for what they have are not more motivated to build more. They are more anxious, more exhausted, more prone to burnout, and ultimately less effective in the very growth they are pursuing. Gratitude is not the enemy of ambition. It is the fuel for sustainable ambition. The person who can genuinely appreciate the life they have while actively building a better one is not complacent, they are grounded. And groundedness, the ability to operate from a stable, sufficient present while working toward a better future, is the psychological condition that makes the work sustainable over the long periods it actually takes. Practice gratitude, not as a spiritual exercise, as a practical recalibration of your attention toward what is working, what is present, what you already have that you would grieve to lose. 5 minutes in the morning, 3 things, real ones, not performed ones, things that actually move something in you when you genuinely attend to them. Then go and build the next thing, from that foundation of genuine appreciation rather than from the anxious insufficiency that most people mistake for ambition. Now I want to bring all of these truths together because they are not 12 separate ideas. They are 12 facets of a single idea. The idea of what it actually takes to live a life that is genuinely, deeply yours. Nobody is coming to save you. which means you are the author. Most of your suffering is optional, which means you have more agency than you think. Time is finite and non-renewable, which means every choice about how to spend it matters. Most people will not tell you when you are wrong, which means honest self-examination is not optional. The version of yourself you show the world is a performance, which means there is a real version underneath it that deserves to be lived. The quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life, which means the people you invest in are among your most important investments. Failure is the path to success, which means the willingness to fail is the price of admission to everything you want. Other people's opinions are a cage, which means the key to freedom is caring less about them than you currently do. Your habits are your destiny, which means the daily small choices are where everything is determined. Meaning is made, not found, which means you do not have to wait for it. You can start making it today. Discipline is freedom, which means the restriction you have been avoiding is actually the liberation you have been seeking. And gratitude and growth are partners, which means you do not have to choose between appreciating where you are and building towards something better. These are the truths, not comfortable ones, not the versions that have been softened to avoid cutting anything, the real ones, the ones that require something from you, the ones that place responsibility where it has always belonged, with you, and in doing so, give you back the power to actually use it. The life you want is not being withheld from you by circumstances or luck or the people around you or the system or anything else external. It is waiting for you inside the daily application of these truths, inside the choice to stop waiting for someone to come and start building it yourself, inside the decision to live the real version of yourself instead of the performance, inside the habit that is slightly better today than it was yesterday, inside the relationship given more genuine attention, inside the failure faced and learned from rather than avoided or surrendered to. It is all already available. It has always been available. The only thing standing between you and it is the willingness to hear the truth and to let it change something, not just to agree with it intellectually and then return to the comfortable patterns, to actually let it land, to actually let it require something of you, to actually use it. That is the invitation. Not to a perfect life, not to a life without difficulty or pain or failure or the inevitable complexity of being alive and human and in relationship with other humans, but to a life that is genuinely, fully, unapologetically yours, built with honest hands from honest material, in the honest acknowledgement of who you are, what you value, and what you are willing to do about it. That life is available. It is always available. The truth just told you how to find it. Now, go build it.